We will continue to support Ukraine becoming a NATO member.
Generals gathered in their masses, just like witches in black masses. Evil minds at blood destruction, sorcerer of death's destruction.
We will stand up every day and every way in favor of the export that the Ukrainian government has asked for.
Today I'm announcing more military assistance.
No more war pigs have the power. And God has struck the hour. Day of judgment, God is calling. On the knees of war pigs crawling, begging mercy for their sins. Satan laughing spreads his wings.
Our role right from the outset of the Ukraine war should have been that of a peacemaker.
We want you to be the super spreaders of truth.
Remember when he sang about this land from east to west? We stomped along with him, we had a voice, you and I, so proud to feel alive. Remember when? Remember when he ran across this land from coast to coast? We wanted him to win, we had a hope, you and I, so proud to be alive. Remember when? Remember when we fought strong and proud from north to south? We held our breath and prayed aloud. We cheered as one, you and I, so proud to feel alive. Remember when?
Here's another shot, Anderson right in. He scores! Anderson! While the team pours over the board, they're mobbing Henderson. They're mobbing Henderson.
Remember when we all took a stand and showed the world how to stand up for your rights? We had a voice, you and I, so proud to feel alive. Remember when? Remember when? Remember when we knew who we were not long ago, but we can do it all again. Stand up tall, keep the faith, so our kids can say one day, remember when. Remember when. Remember when.
I don't know if it's far-fetched to ask, but Russian actors could be continuing to fuel things.
Let's get ready to spread Spreaders, welcome. So we're getting back on the streaming horse this time of year, and we picked good timing. Looks like elections right around the corner. Exciting times to be a Canadian. Also scary times. Matt is getting out of the ocean right now in Thailand. I think he's wearing the same swim trunks as Sean Connery was in the Bond movie. So let's catch up with a little news while we're waiting for Matt. England's got an opinion on Mark Carney. I just got to share the screen here. Oh, this was crazy. You guys see this? Wayne Gretzky statue vandalized with feces. This is the people that we're up against. They're keying people's Teslas, throwing crap on Wayne Gretzky. I mean, what are we even doing? Let's check on what the Brits have to say about Mark Carney after having him as the head of their bank.
I think it is extraordinary that Mark Carney has become the Prime Minister of Canada. He did a terrible job in Britain of the governorship of the Bank of England. He created a lot of the problems that blew up on my watch and that I got blamed for were actually created by him. He backed Labour in the election and Rachel Reeves's policies, which are leading the country to bankruptcy. So why on earth the Liberal Party of Canada has selected this man, I have no idea. And I think it is illegitimate that this guy has never been elected as a member of Parliament in Canada. I'm utterly puzzled, and the Canadians. I'm not going to tell the Canadians how to vote. Obviously, I want the Conservatives to be elected in Canada, but I think it's Justin Trudeau has pursued a lot of the same policies that Europe has been pursuing, and America has raced ahead of us. Back at the turn of the millennium, the average Brit was catching up with the average American in terms of income per head.
Wow.
We are now $34,000 a year behind. We are poorer than Mississippi, which is the poorest American state. And the same is true. The same is true of France and Germany, and to some extent of Canada, because they pursued all of these woke policies. High taxes, high spending, not using their natural resources. And Justin Trudeau was the architect of that. And of course, Mark Carney has been the advocate of these policies. So I don't know what is going on in Canada, but in the same way as I think people in Britain need to wake up.
That's all right. We don't know what's going on in Canada either. It's wild to see. And, the England got melted by it. There's another clip. I might bring that up later, where she says that in the last 15 years, England has fallen behind $34,000 per capita on America. Isn't that wild to see? So I think we have a Matthew Ehret in the house. We're going to bring him on. Monsieur Ehret.
Hey, comment ça va, mon ami?
Ça va.
Right. And just like that, Jason's entire French repertoire has been used up.
That's right. If we go really slow, I can kind of insert some cereal box French that I picked up.
Well, there's like a crazy, when you listen for it, there's like a lot of overlap between English and French. And I think a lot of the English words were stolen from the French. So there's like 50% of the same. You're like, how do you say that in English? And you're like, it's the same word.
The problem is
Chandelier.
speed for me. I go and I watch French stuff, and I just I was watching Drive to Survive, the Formula One show, and one of the heads is French, and a whole bunch of the guys are French, and they're just and I'll just hear amour or something, and I'll be like, okay, I think I get the gist.
It's still a little bit better than the Quebec shows like Tête à Claque, and there's these Quebec shows that are just impossible. It's like listening to Klingon, but a more funny, goofy version of it.
Much more fun. Much more fun than Klingon. So where are you?
Currently I'm in Thailand, in Koh Samui, a little island.
Wow. What's it?
There's like this freedom group down here that periodically invites Cynthia and I to speak, and it's like, how can you say no to that? So we'll be here for another week or so, and then we're going to go to Bangkok, where we've got some friends who have organized a few meetings there, and then we're back home.
Wow. Amazing. Is this like an expat community there, or are these Thai people?
Yeah.
Or yeah, right.
Mostly, I would say 90%, 95% expat. Yeah.
Yeah. People who plan their lives correctly and they're living
like it's really, really great. I mean, they're really, really good people. And it's interesting because they've all, like, a lot of them are retired. Most of them are retired, but they've all got very creative stories and entrepreneurial sort of histories that have given them a little bit of freedom of mobility. And also because they've kind of not gone with a mold, like one or another mold that the system told them to adapt to. They've got a bit more creative flexibility. So it's interesting. Yeah. It's a good group.
Yeah. What's the politics in Thailand? What's the situation over there?
Well, from what I'm gathering, and I'm no expert, but from what I'm getting, it's a monarchy, but it's different from the sort of, I'm very critical of monarchical systems in general. However, this has got a different type of Asiatic monarchical tradition about it. And from what I've gathered from my research into the battles against imperial rape of societies, this particular monarchy is a different sort of relationship to the people in history, whereby Thailand is one of the few countries, I think there's maybe Thailand and Ethiopia, that never got colonized ever. It's one of the few countries in the world, and part of the reason for that has been that the Thai monarchy is recognized as having a very active influence, and they've got a cultural philosophy that does ground it much more so than the detached blue blood establishment of the old Western European oligarchs. So they've done a pretty good job of standing up to great powers that have tried to oppose their will. Um, they've recently joined the BRICS, so they're an associate member of the BRICS. And as such, they've signed on to a bunch of really massive high-speed rail and infrastructure development that China's assisting in the construction of, which is it's creating a lot of optimism and job opportunities, which haven't really been permitted since Thailand has typically been a second world country choked under the IMF, the World Bank, that hasn't really permitted it to get its head out from underwater. So that's looking pretty positive. There's a lot of optimism amongst the population about that. But I'm in a very kind of sleepy part of Thailand where the locals don't have too much of a broader vision beyond their island of what's going on. It's more in Bangkok where you have a bit more of a unit, like a higher perspective of things.
Yeah.
So
Seems like a country that should be a powerhouse anyway, but certain
yeah,
people don't
well,
like that.
there's discussion too around, and this is probably what we're going to be talking about with some people in Bangkok. Is now that the Straits of Malacca are increasingly over congested, there's a recognition that trade is going to still increase in the Pacific, but like 40% of world trade moves through the Straits of Malacca. It's a very tiny little gap around Malaysia and Indonesia, but they need to open that up a little bit. So there's been discussion for like 40 years around the Kra Canal in Thailand to open up a Thai canal, because there's a part where it's very it's kind of like the Panama Canal, like there's so little landmass that needs to be cut through to make a new canal, and it could easily be done pretty quickly. So I know that there's more robust discussion about reviving that plan right now, which could really open things up in some good ways. The Straits of Malacca too have, anyways. Yeah, so there's a lot of forward thinking discussion happening.
Yeah, neat stuff I've never heard of. I didn't know they were building a canal there. I've heard of the Straits of Malacca, but I didn't really give it much thought. Certainly haven't heard people talking about it, so that's cool to know. Thought we'd get a little bit of a insight into Thailand. You're over there. What's the temperature?
You don't want to know.
No, I don't. No, I don't. I was excited about hitting 1 degree today.
For those who are listening, I messaged Jason when we just got to Thailand, saying that I'm doing some work and writing an article on the beach, and his response was, "Writing an article on the beach, I can't think about that." And he just
Yeah.
right. moved on and just dropped that conversation.
I think the
And,
reply was literally, bro.
yeah, that was verbatim. Yeah, that's right.
How dare you? Bare feet up, writing an article, drink off to the side. Yeah. So we might as well get down to it. We're here to celebrate the coronation of King Carney in our own special way.
Yeah. How do you want to address this great event, this honored new viscount?
Well, I'll tell everyone I was playing with a little bit of video. I felt like forced that we had to say something about this Carney cat coming over, and just instantly being, the guy hasn't lived here in how long, never held office. He's a banker, an international banker, worked for Goldman Sachs, and they're his arrival is being treated as if he's like the greatest populist leader everywhere. I'm seeing posts from, I keep a sneaky eye on liberal social media. I have some sock puppet accounts that I watch the liberals with, like on Blue Sky and Instagram and stuff, and they're literally posting just these huge posts about what a godlike wonder this guy is. Like out of nowhere, they wouldn't have known who this guy was a few years ago. But I think you got a pretty good idea who he is. You predicted his coronation a little over a year ago. It's the first time you mentioned it to me.
Well, yeah, the first time I wrote about this in a real way was in an article in 2020. When
2020.
there was, yeah, the Carney, I think it was an article called something like the Carney Freeland duo ushers in a great or prepares to usher in a great reset for Canada or something.
Right.
Where he'd given an interview where you could see that it was like a mainstream interview, and it was clear that that a message was being floated to the audience that he is prime ministerial material. Um, and he kind of like brushed it off, but you could see that he wanted it in his eyes. And he wrote like then there was like a fluff piece autobiography, probably ghostwritten for him, that was circulated a couple of years after that. He'd already been brought into Canada from England to manage there it is. He'd already been brought into Canada to manage the COVID task force for economic recovery of North America, or of Canada. And in this fluff piece autobiography, you could just see what they're doing, right? Like they're just preparing, they're humanizing him for a consumer target audience in order to prepare the brand for more influence or more responsibilities in managing this little section of the British Empire. And within it, the idea was again floated of how he's entertained the idea of becoming a prime minister, but was not ready for it. But it's on his mind to take, he'll do his duty if need be. So all of that to say, it's been on my radar for a while, and you can just see like that he has been vetted by some very high officials, and I think the first time I wrote about the guy was in a serious way was in the Canadian Patriot issue 6 in 2013,
Right.
where the bail-ins were coming to Canada, and he was a big player in bringing the legislation into Canada, which was finally only acted upon in 2016 after he had now left and he had been now in charge of the Bank of England and the Financial Stability Board, which is a subset of a department of the Bank of International Settlements,
In
which he did
13, he was
alongside.
Bank of Canada governor.
He had just been exiting. Yeah, he's preparing to shift gears, but he was, I think, from 2008 to 2013, Bank of Canada.
Right.
The bail-in regime was the thing that was created to justify the stealing of people's deposits and savings under the condition of any type of future banking crisis, with the logic that it's immoral to print taxpayer money out of thin air to bail out failing banks under an economic collapse. So that's what we did in 2008 in the US especially, but there's a version of that was applied to Canada too, to bail out our big five banks. Not in the same form as it took with Wall Street, but it was all still a bailout.
Yeah.
And instead they said, well, since that's immoral, let's allow for the banks to steal, to basically convert savings deposits into capital in the bank that will keep them fungible. And so that became the thing that Carney was playing a role in overseeing. It was baked into the European Central Bank constitution. It was baked into the Dodd-Frank Act in 2012, and it became part of Canada too. So I think that's what they're gearing up to do as well. So having Canada, that's going to create a lot of pissed off Canadians. So
What's
I
that
think,
act you mentioned?
I don't remember the name. It was, you can do Canada bail-in 2016 was what
Okay.
it.
It's our bail-in act.
Yeah, it's in the banking acts of the National Bank of Canada now. Yeah, that oversees and regulates the other private banks.
What I'm freaking out about
Mm.
is that you talk about prorogation in this 2020 article.
Do it? Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
The logic
I
behind
forgot about that.
prorogation is that the government's annual economic program announced last September did not take into account. It's just funny. That's where we are, you know. Here,
Huh.
I'll zoom
All
her
right.
in a bit. Yeah. Well, good call, Matt.
Yeah. Great.
Anybody
Well,
not following Matt, you're missing out on gems like this. You can be 5 years ahead of the program if you get on to Canadian Patriot or subscribe to his Substack.
yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you for the plug.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Courtney's, I loved your initiative. I know you and I were toying around a month ago or so about the idea of doing a little video to prepare the minds of Canadians about Prime Minister Carney being beset upon them, and I kind of chickened out. I was like, yeah, it's going to happen anyway. Nothing we can do about it. It's like, let's just focus on other things. And then, in hindsight, I'm like, that was probably the wrong idea, because when I saw the way what you did, coming up with this little 5-minute video clip as the first part of a series, it was clear that that was the right thing to do. So I'm glad that you did that. And anybody who wants to watch that, they can go to CanadianPatriot.org or my Substack or anywhere else that we have platforms
Substack
to
is
check it
up,
out.
and this actual video that this will be the first broadcast premiere of it. It's already up on CP's YouTube and Rumble and all the usuals. You can scan the QR code to go off, and definitely go give it a watch after watching our show, to make sure we get the views on it. Views are great on it. It's got a nice little ramp, getting like 1,000 a day there at the start. And well, I think we could maybe stop BSing about it, and we can give her a watch and then see what people's reaction is. Shall we?
Let's do it.
Now that Carney has been officially installed as the interim Prime Minister of Canada, the decision to replace Justin Trudeau with the much more vicious technocrat can only be understood by the historic role of the British Empire in using Canada as a weapon against Canadians, and especially Americans, going back for over 2 centuries. In the 19th century, Canada was recognized as a principal enemy of the USA. Confederate intelligence had enjoyed vast patronage and support by the British Empire through its web of intelligence bases in Montreal and Toronto. These Confederate intelligence networks not only coordinated terrorist operations against the Union from the north, but additionally paid and directed John Wilkes Booth to murder Lincoln after the war's end. These facts were outlined in detail in Barry Sheehy's brilliant 2017 book, Montreal, City of Secrets. When Cecil Rhodes' Round Table, founded in 1902, became a driving force in shaping imperial grand strategy in order to recapture the lost colonies of the Americas and establish a world federation under the City of London, it was Canada that incubated hundreds of Rhodes Scholars between 1907 through 1952, which then infiltrated the USA. This fact was exposed by American journalist Eugene Griffin in the 1951 Chicago Tribune article titled, "Canada Offers Fine Field to Rhodes Wards."
British-educated Canadians are in a unique position to serve Britain through Canada's influence on Washington as a next-door neighbor of the United States. Canada acts as a connecting link between England and the United States, helping to hold the neighboring republic in line with the Dominion's mother country. When General MacArthur displeased Britain and Canada by his efforts to win the Korean War, Canada's Oxford-educated Minister for External Affairs, Lester B. Pearson, complained that American-Canadian relations had become difficult and delicate. MacArthur was fired the next day. Pearson's Foreign Office staff was packed with Rhodes Scholars. 1 out of every 8 were educated at Oxford University on the scholarships created by Cecil Rhodes, empire builder and diamond mogul who wanted the United States taken back into Britain's fold. Other Canadian Foreign Office members also were educated in England. Pearson went to Oxford on a Massey Scholarship, endowed by a Canadian millionaire.
A career path that would be very familiar to Mark Carney. As the informative 2010 LPAC documentary, The Special Relationship is for Traitors, showcased, during the early 20th century, leading American military figures like Brigadier General Billy Mitchell understood Britain's role in supporting the Confederacy and Britain's manipulation of global wars. General Mitchell fought against the Special Relationship tooth and nail and led the military to create War Plan Red and War Plan Orange to defeat Britain under the context of an eventual war between the English-speaking powers. These plans became official U.S. military doctrine in 1930 and were crafted in response to Anglo-Canadian plans to invade the USA that had been drafted 10 years earlier, known as Defense Scheme 1. Despite the name, it is admitted by even the most ardent anti-American historians that these plans were entirely offensive in nature, as no prior U.S. plan to invade Canada then existed. War Plan Red was only taken off the books when America decided it was more important to put down London's fascist Frankenstein threat than fight Britain head-on in World War II. The Green Agenda's infiltration into U.S. foreign and energy policy considerations was also driven in large measure through the influence of Canada's Maurice Strong. From 1963 to 1970, Strong oversaw a vast reorganization of the Liberal Party, even bragging to his biographer Elaine Dewar in 1994 that he was on the selection committee that brought Fabian Society agent Pierre Trudeau into politics in 1963. From 1965 to 1967, Strong ran Canada's Ministry of Foreign Affairs, founded Canada's International Development Agency, which transformed the philosophy of international aid from assisting poor nations to build full-spectrum economies into predatory borrowing tied to conditionalities. He also mentored a young Klaus Schwab, co-founded the World Economic Forum in 1971, chaired the first UN Forum on Population in 1972, served on the Bilderberg Group Steering Committee, and crafted a worldview which became known as the Green New Deal and Agenda 21, launched at the Rio Summit in Brazil in 1992, which he also chaired. Today, the spiritual heir of Maurice Strong and the Roundtable movement has been set up to take dictatorial control of Canada under the suggested threat of a climate emergency. This spiritual heir of Maurice Strong and the Cecil Rhodes legacy is, of course, Mark Carney. In the next Canadian Patriot short, we will explore Mark Carney's plan to control nearly every aspect of life via the threat of climate change, and the cabal looking to reduce Earth's population via the greatest financial scam of all time, the Environmental Social Governance Index.
Don't know who that Jason Dahl is. Bringing you back on, Matt. Don't know who that Jason Dahl is. We'll have to have him on sometime.
Yeah, he seems like a talented guy. He always stays behind the scenes, though. I have no idea what he looks like.
Yeah.
No one's ever seen him.
So I can't wait for part 2. I mean, like, this was going to be a SuperSpreader's video, and I was just ripping chunks out of Matt's latest article about Carney at first, but then Matt was like, "Whoa, let's make it a Canadian Patriot series," and then got more information, a little bit more guidance that way, and this stuff is blowing my mind. I mean, what the hell is with Maurice Strong? Like, what is that guy? Like, he's not even human. He changed Canada so much, and nobody knows who he is.
Yeah, he's a real wild one, that one. He's so useful, and I don't think even people who know of his name and know of that he's a nefarious actor don't properly appreciate the scope and influence of this man on our entire world on so many levels. And I don't even think he's his own man. Like, don't even get me wrong. I don't think that Maurice Strong is like this high level intellect evil genius, but he was definitely brought into the inner sanctum, had talents, persuasive talents, a deep ideological commitment to evil, and a great power of projecting an image or a brand of nobility to dumb people. And, he had a certain hypnotic charm, it seems. But he's sort of what I would say would be the closest thing to the real godfather of the Green New Deal and the Great Reset. If I would label anybody, I wouldn't label Klaus Schwab. Even Klaus Schwab, when Maurice Strong died in 2015, Klaus Schwab gave a eulogy calling him my mentor.
Whoa.
He was
my
he
mentor.
Was a co-founder. My mentor. And he was co-founder of the World Economic Forum, a lifelong co-chair. The guy was the director of the World Bank, not a director, president of the World Bank, an undersecretary of the United Nations for a number of years under Kofi Annan. But it's always, when you look at the real power behind any institution, you got to look at the second in command. Yeah, it doesn't just apply for Freemasonry. Earlier on, though, this is like we're talking in the 90s right now, but if you go back even further, before he co-founded the World Economic Forum, um, the guy was the head of the Ministry of External Affairs of Canada, um, under Lester B. Pearson, and then under Trudeau, the first one. He created the Canada International Development Agency, as we pointed out in that little video, which was what rewired development aid towards appropriate technologies and green investments way before it was popular. This was then replicated in the case of U.S. aid and the World Bank more generally after that. But it was the Canadian example that said, okay, Pakistan, you want to have a nuclear reactor? That might have been good for Diefenbaker, because he was stupid and naive and believed in progress. But no. The new wisdom says you can use that money, but only for a windmill, which is not going to have an impact on your environment in Pakistan or wherever, you know. But before that, he was the youngest vice president of Power Corporation that sort of monopolized all of the power and utilities of Quebec. They had a branch in British Columbia too, as a private entity. That was then it was formerly the Montreal Light and Traction that became Power Corporation when there was a technocratic takeover of Canada with the ouster of the national union government of Paul Sauvé and Maurice Duplessis and Daniel Johnson in 1960.
Isn't Power Corp
Yeah.
kind of like another Lavaland where it's like a filter for dudes to get into powerful positions? So I have heard of Power Corp.
Yeah. Well, it's run. Yeah, they selected a little cardboard cutout sociopath named Paul Desmarais, who was like
Oh yes.
kind of a nobody, kind of like an Amschel Rothschild, you know, like a low level uh, guy who could make deals. He worked with buses in Quebec. He helped rent out buses, you know, low level, probably low level crime, you know, but they could just see that he had some talent. So they're like, well, we need a new type of elite after the Quiet Revolution to manage the things that had formerly been managed by the more Catholic Church leaning in, you know, elites of Canada for over a century or a few centuries before that. And so they were like, okay, let's use this guy, this cardboard cutout Desmarais. And at the same time, they brought in Maurice Strong to be the vice president. Strong, it seems, was already recruited in New York, where he did like a bit of a stage at the Rockefeller Plaza. I think he was picked up by one of the Rockefellers, maybe David, I'm not too sure, who saw that he had talent. He also had family connections. His uncle, Frank Strong, was the president of the YMCA. His aunt Anna Strong was an advisor to Chairman Mao Zedong. So he had some
Right.
deep family connections, yeah, that are weird. And the YMCA was kind of like the Red Cross in some ways. It was throughout the Cold War, the only one of the few agencies permitted to operate on both sides of the Iron Curtain. So it was extremely important for espionage and intelligence operations in general, as well as other, you know, brainwashing of useful idiots within the domain of there's a reason why the Village People turned that into the anthem for the gay revolution. Um, and it wasn't a new thing. That there's these practices going back to its early founding days. So Maurice Strong was just connected on so many levels. And lastly, I would say, um, he he was the owner of like most of the Ogallala aquifer and into this very day. I got a lot of this information from Elaine Dewar that we cited in that video. Her book Cloak of Green is a wonderful resource, and it's unfortunately like $800 if people want to buy a hard copy. It's almost it's been so eliminated from the market you can't access it. But I luckily got an interlibrary loan many years ago and picked up a copy. I think there's still some floating around as PDFs. And it's a really useful book because she went in there as a fan of Maurice Strong and the eco agenda. And then as she was hanging around him for a few months, she was allowed to like, it was going to be an official biography, a fluff piece of Maurice Strong. He became horrified to realize what he was doing. Oh yeah, it's Paul Desmarais over there, the Power Corps. He's dead now. But yeah, he was the guy assigned to run Power Corps for a number of years. His family still does.
I know the
Um,
name from Ottawa. Like, what company do they run now? Like, there's something they have a company under their name, or perhaps probably buildings named after them.
Oh, the Demray building. There's they invest in universities as well. Kind of like it's like a Canadian lower level Rockefeller family, like a sub dynasty, right? So
I've learned now when Wikipedia lists someone in the first line as a philanthropist to immediately go, oh, philanthropist, huh? That's how Strong is listed. That's how Desmarais is listed. The first line of their biography is philanthropist. Same with
yeah,
Rockefellers, right?
yeah,
Okay, you're a
yeah.
philanthropist.
He thinks you're trying too hard, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and you're like at the Wikipedia article said listed as the third wealthiest person in Canada at the time of his death. So he got that wealthy by giving it all away, I guess. You know,
It's the law of attraction, man. You put out the good, you get back the good. You put out
it's
money,
the
you get out money,
secret.
you get back money. Yeah, it's the secret.
Yeah, wow. So Strong is something else. Also the concrete plans for Canada and America to invade each other. So that was Billy Mitchell. He's the World War One hero, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
Billy Mitchell's an interesting patriot, and yeah, I'm that LPAC documentary from I think it was like 2009 when it came out. Very short. It's like 12 minutes long. I think it's still available online. I hope it is.
that's where I got it.
I didn't. Yeah, that's where you got it? Okay, yeah, that blew my mind when I watched that and then dug in a little bit more into this War Plan Red thing and War Plan Orange, which we didn't even bring up, but they came together. They were both two sides of the same thing, which was a preparation for a counterattack or a defensive maneuver against the global British Empire, which back then, especially after World War One, was much more highly recognized amongst American patriots as a true force of evil in the world that we had to prepare for ourselves for. And it had a special relationship that the British Empire had won with the emperor. I don't know if it was Hirohito at the time, but the Japanese emperor who became increasingly an asset of the empire and part of this global power. And it was picked up by American counterintelligence officers after, even I think during a little after World War One, that there was a scenario on the books for an Anglo-Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor. That was already something that the British had crafted as a scenario with the Japanese as part of a global war against the type of America that was best represented by McKinley, by Lincoln, and that was in the middle of reviving itself in a certain important degree with Warren Harding, the short-lived president who died in very mysterious circumstances in 1924. And so these American patriots, led by Billy Mitchell, but there were some others. I think MacArthur's father, Arthur MacArthur, was involved with this more patriotic grouping that were savvy
Right.
to the nature of the beast. They came up with these plans in 1929, and pre-existing that plan, there had been like you pointed out in the video, Defense Scheme One. That's what the British Empire created to invade the USA from Canada. It seems very similar to what they had already attempted in the Civil War, when there was like 10,000 British troops stationed in Canada during during the Civil War itself in 1862-63, preparing to invade the Union from the north while the Union was trying to fight the South, which it was getting huge amounts of financial and intelligence support by the British Empire as well as the French. And so it seems like that scheme was just retooled a few decades later for Defense Scheme One. And to this
And
very day, yeah, like most Canadians and that I've encountered who know about any of this stuff, they think that they don't know about Defense Scheme One set up in 1919. They only know of War Plan Red, the supposed U.S. plan to invade Canada. They don't recognize that that was not offensive. It was actually a U.S. defensive posture. So a lot of sleights of hand have been done over the years to convince Canadians that we should, embrace our British protectors ever more deeply against the forever threat of American invasion. And for much of the time,
yeah,
that's not been true.
and we're getting that amplified right now, right? With these guys here. I'm going to share the screen again one sec for this wonderful topical moment. Yeah, oh, that's the wrong one, but here we go. Share instead. These arses, they're having They're meeting at the War Museum. So Carney's had all the premiers sit down at the War Museum, surrounded by tanks and military equipment. How they're gonna get Trump? They're also tough. Canada's tough. You got diesel submarines. Anyway, yeah, like you say, these strings are still being pulled to regenerate antagonism with the states, and as you've so wonderfully covered, and we've brought to light with film, how Britain was directly intervening in the Civil War, and it was Russia that protected the coasts from Britain during those conflicts.
Mm-hmm.
And they were directly plotting Lincoln's and others' assassinations in Montreal. I had a quick question, just rewatching it. I frame up on that one guy who was arrested, that young guy who was arrested, and he's sitting in jail, and they have the 3 black and white pictures of him that I show. Who was that?
Oh, that was, I'm forgetting my names now. Here, if we go to let's Google conspirators, Lincoln murder, hanged. I think you have to say hanged.
Hanged. All right.
Uh,
Yeah. Execution of the
uh,
Lincoln's conspirators. Let's see if this has got it.
I think it was John
David
Surratt.
Harold, Lewis Powell, George Atzerodt, Mary Surratt.
Yeah, I think it was John Surratt, who was Mary Surratt's brother, I
Okay.
believe.
Oh yeah. It's not entirely important. It's just yet another guy who was caught in this net, is like proven to be a conspirator and chucked in jail and hanged, and Canadians don't know about this. Americans don't know about this. It's all plotted in Montreal. And
Yeah, no,
and
absolutely.
Booth
Yeah.
ran to Montreal afterwards, right?
And well, Booth, no, Booth was sorry, I just lost my screen there. Booth was in Montreal for 5 weeks prior to the his assassination of Lincoln.
Yeah. He didn't run there after, though?
No,
Oh, okay.
afterwards, I
I
can't
got that
say
mixed
where
up.
he went because the public narrative is that he was shot and killed, in a shootout at a barn. They never really found the body though. Um,
Well,
they never
barns have lots
identified
of
him.
hay and corners and stuff like that. It's kind of a pain to find things
Yeah,
in a barn.
it's like Justin Trudeau's younger brother, right? Who they just stopped searching for after what, 5 seconds of the avalanche. It's like, yeah, it's hard, there's an avalanche. Why keep looking? Um, no, for the case of John Wilkes Booth, I suspect that he probably lived out his days, and was protected. They did have to throw a few people under the bus because Lincoln still, although many of Lincoln's enemies came into power with Andrew Johnson, the new president after Lincoln, who was a traitor. He was part of the deep Wall Street faction that was very pro-slave power and that re-empowered the slave power, um, to reacquire their lost acquisitions that were lost during the Civil War. And Andrew Johnson was just such a traitor; it was crazy. He sabotaged Reconstruction. But despite that, there were still sufficient patriots within power around people like William Seward, the Secretary of State, who wasn't. They couldn't kick him out, and the investigations into the real evidence that was much more present and easy to acquire back then into the uh, Anglo-Confederate operations in British Canada that were really behind this conspiracy, as well as the Hive. As you pointed out, 4 people were hanged, uh, found guilty and hanged, but they were hanged. It was a bit of a show trial too. There was a much broader conspiracy of many more participants who were protected because of the speed at which these people were unjustly hung, and could no longer speak after, I think it was like 3 or 4 weeks of a show trial. Very, very just pushed through fast. And a lot of those co-conspirators were protected, and I think many of them were brought into Canada, as were people like, what's the name of I'm forgetting his name now. The president of the Confederacy himself,
Oh,
Two Confederates. One, I get it.
I always think
Jefferson
about
Davis. Jefferson
yes, there
Davis.
you go. I always think about
Became a
Lee
V.
whenever I think about that, but he was the general.
Yeah, no, Jefferson Davies came to Montreal, Canada. His family settled here.
Oh yeah, you told me
After,
about that. Yeah. So that's
yeah.
crazy. Is this the bosom of the queen is waiting up there just a little bit
Oh,
north?
yeah, yeah, yeah. And the Secretary of State, Benjamin, the Zionist B'nai B'rith, Freemason. What was his name? Benjamin. Oh, well, anyway, the Secretary of State of the Confederacy, of a massively powerful person, who also got sanctuary in England and lived out his days as a British Viscount. The guy who became uh, Bulla, John Bulla, who is the head of the Confederate Secret Service based in Europe, that oversaw all of the negotiations with Lord Palmerston to produce all of the Confederate warships that were used to fight in the Civil War. That guy he was the beloved uncle and mentor of Theodore Roosevelt. He also lived out his days in England, never came back to America, is never allowed for good reason. But he did groom Theodore Roosevelt to revive the KKK eugenics, Anglo-American special relationship when Theodore Roosevelt came to power over the dead body of McKinley in 1901, turning the U.S. more and more into this appendage of the British Empire, which is what I see as a danger right now, is the possibility that Trump is being duped into signing on to something similar to this today as we speak, where there's certain dangers about Carney and certain grand strategies of the British Empire in play that I don't think enough people are looking at.
Yeah.
And one of those things is, Trump just put up on Truth Social his a certain messaging, and it might be a deflection. Maybe he's playing the game as he's often been known to do, but maybe not. And right now, it seems that King Charles has offered, the guy who inaugurated the Great Reset in 2020, King Charles III, has just offered the USA this amazing deal to become an associate member of the British Commonwealth, of which Trump has responded by saying, "I love Prince Charles. This is a great idea." He put it out on his Truth Social account this morning Thailand time. So that is a disturbing prospect, because I've been warning for quite some time now, especially, well, pretty much the moment Trump began to say that Canada should become the 51st state. I've been warning that this could be a bait and switch, not to make Canada more Republican, but to trick America to become more British.
Oh
Um,
my
and
god.
Carney, yeah, there's enough signs within and around Carney, especially through that Canada 2020 think tank, which is behind the North American Union back in 2005, run by the Queen's Privy Council, that this actually is a real scenario in play, a real trap, that I'm encouraging patriots in both Canada and the USA, and even Britain, to be a little bit more aware of. Because you got to think like the enemy. The enemy is not a World Wrestling Federation bad guy. They are much more sophisticated and layered than many good intended patriots in America and Canada prepared to understand at this point.
Yeah,
So they
it's
got to
tempting.
increase that.
Tempting to
Yeah,
always think of lizard people fondling their mustaches and
yeah.
such. We've got some people hanging with some questions. If you look at the screen, we got a link if you want to come on live. You look at the bottom, I'll put a link in chat for people if you do want to join in. I'm getting an echo. Oh, I know what it is. It's
I hear no echo.
yeah, I hear it here. I got something coming through the web browser here. Yeah, if you got any questions for Matt about Carney, about the historical background behind the situation that we're in, it's time to go here. We've got Rick. He's been waiting since the start of the show. We're going to bring Rick in. Rick says he writes sci-fi novels with a bad guy character named Max Strong, who's descended from Maurice Strong.
It's
You can tell us all about it. Rick, are you ready? We're going to bring you on.
Yeah, has anyone heard of Alan Watt from Canada? He used to be on Alex Jones and on Republic Broadcasting, and he I started listening to him in 2006 and up until about the mid 2000s, and early in the 9/11 Truth movement, he talked about a lot of the same eugenics and Malthusian, and he talked about Maurice Strong, and he was Scottish, but lived in Canada in Esther, Ontario. He passed away in 2021, and it was while looking for the reason why he died, looking in the circumstance of his death, that I encountered, because I started typing in his search terms and all this stuff and his terminology. It was through that I ran into Strategic Culture Forum, and where I started reading Joaquin Flores, and I couldn't stop reading his stuff. It was so great. And then I found Matt Ehret and started reading his work. That's how I discovered you, Matt. Was researching.
And by the way,
yeah.
Hey man, how you doing? No, we're friends. I didn't realize that you were the Rick. Okay, cool, man.
Yeah.
Hey, long time no see.
Rick.
So Alan Watt. Has anyone heard of Alan Watt?
I only know of the Espin
at
Institute,
least
Alan Watt.
not by name.
I don't know about the Canadian. I don't know about the good one. I don't know. I only know about the bad one.
Yeah, there's a new age one that's really famous, but there's another guy named Alan Watt. He used to be in Alex Jones a lot.
Okay, no, I don't.
Oh, okay. Well, I was writing about Max Strong, this fictional character descended from Maurice Strong, in Canada, because he used to talk about him all the time. So my question is, on the one hand, it's like I was listening to Tom Luongo get really emotional about and angry about LIBOR and sulfur, and rattling off all these financial economies language that I don't understand about bond yields, and it goes over my head. About indicating that Trump is good because he's instituted sulfur to counteract LIBOR, which was screwing America over, and that Canada is kind of the back door, and why it's a different approach to why Canada is a tool of Britain against America than yours, Matt. Yours seems to be his history and espionage, and whereas his is like bond yields and derivatives and treasuries and things like like why. So in his thing seems to make Trump look out to be good and Mark Carney to be bad, but then the liberals think the opposite. They think Mark Carney's good and Trump's bad, but I kind of see them doing the same, their own versions of the same kind of thing. It's like Brian Berletic and Danny Information says that Trump is really very antagonistic towards China, and then combining that with what Johnny Vedmore says about Elon Musk and what he's doing with the Department of Education and privatizing everything, it seems to be very much on the right-wing libertarian version of the anti-nation state agenda of deconstructing nation states, sort of the way that Javier Milei did. And then also we got the information of Scott Bessent being with a Soros person. So is Trump really that great of a patriot, that's for multipolarity again, or is he just, or are him and Mark Carney both kind of different dialectical opposites of the same kind of thing?
Is that your question for Matt?
Yeah, kind of. I know it's complicated.
Yeah, and it's a big question.
It's all complicated, man.
It is, but that's the right kind of question, because the world's not simple, right? There's complex layers, and it's important to be able to have moving parts with some subtlety and nuance moving in the mind, because if we get too many people get into the habit of wanting to be spoon-fed simple answers from ChatGPT that they're not going to get if they want to actually understand the truth, they got to have a lot more dexterity. So I appreciate the way you shaped your question, and I'd say in regards to both of those extremes, I very much like Tom, and I like Johnny Vedmore, and I get along pretty well with people who either have right now a very positive Trumpian analysis. I've got a lot of friends in that network, and I've got friends in the more, I don't want to say black pill, but who are looking at a lot of the truthful, very dark elements that are being ignored by the over optimists. So you got people who are only looking at the signs of evil messaging, which should be looked at and observed, because I mean Elon Musk and the transhumanists pushing a technocracy Inc., which is sick, is real and should not be ignored. Um, Trump, there's a lot of red alarms. I think we would be mentally sloppy to ignore the red alarms around the figure of Trump, from his purchasing of Resorts International, which, you can't just be any old rich guy and vetted and permitted to buy something as important to the world, globalist management of black markets, drug trade, as Resorts International, which is a CIA cutout for global narcotics, um, and drug money laundering, as well as broader mafia operations, which are always enmeshed with the CIA that was set up by Allen Dulles in the 1950s. You've got to be kind of vetted in a certain way. That doesn't mean you're a bad person. You can be vetted and still be a patriot playing a Machiavellian game. I get that, but it shouldn't be ignored either, right? Or the variety of connections to Robert Maxwell and the Royals that goes back to the early 80s or even late 70s, around Trump, or his researching of the Kabbalah and how he's got a Rabbi Berg, Kabbalah teacher. That shouldn't be ignored. In the same measure, people who are overly dark about their analysis, tend to often ignore, or they didn't take the time to research the positive tradition of the USA. They tend to think of the USA as having been always intrinsically an evil empire of white slave masters pushing for a global empire from the earliest days of 1776. And they don't discern any positive tradition, which has actually been, as I think I've done a pretty decent job. And you and I are both admirers of the work of LaRouche.
Oh yeah.
And both of us, I think, got a few really good leads, important leads in our research over what LaRouche had mapped out with a lot of really great researchers with EIR, of this positive tradition of the American system that great men often get killed for when they're reviving this, whether it's JFK or Lincoln or McKinley or Harding. There's always this revival of this American anti-imperial spirit of the Constitution that they're living for and dying for when they're fighting this world empire. And so we can identify that there has been this positive thing, which is real, which is clearly being invoked in a certain way by Trump's references to the McKinley tariff, to Lincoln, things that also his efforts to create positive relations with Russia. Um, these are good things, and we recognize that they're part of a deeper historical continuity. I don't speak Tom Luongo's language. He's a very, very proficient Austrian school economist, statistician, and he's looking at mechanisms that I'm not proficient in that language when he comes up with his theories. I look at other things when though we have a lot of overlap in a lot of the things that we're analyzing, but it's coming from a different place. And my view of the Austrian school as a whole anyway, so I'm not going to say anything more about that.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, but I think it is a very sincere danger. What I'll say is, and what I alluded to with Jason, that the game masters currently playing the system are not caught off guard by the systemic breakdown that we're currently living through. This is something that they have planned and gamed out when they killed Bobby Kennedy and created this system back in 1971 when the US dollar was taken off the gold reserve and floated, right? They created intentionally a time bomb that was designed to blow, as all bubbles must blow. And with that blowout, their plan was to always usher in a new sort of controlled response under a restored world government. So the danger is, whether Trump knows this or not, is he part of that process or not? I would like to think he doesn't know. I'd prefer to think that. However, I'm not going to say he isn't. Right? I'm not going to completely disband that hypothesis. What I do know is that Carney definitely is on the inside joke. He's a very high level player for the empire, extremely high level intellect, much more high quality mind. And I don't say this in a good way; it just means he's much smarter and competent and vicious than Justin Trudeau, and certainly is privy to the broader strategy at play. So could there be some sort of I do see that the chess pieces are in place right now to use Canada and, and to use Canada as a once again its historic wedge to break up the potential alliance of U.S. and Russian relations. That's a thing that's been part of our shame based, like it's a shameful part of our history that I see is partially in place, and also to loosen the alliance between Russia and China. There's some indicators that Canada under Carney will be feasibly making a big effort to attract China into the embrace of cheap investments into Canadian resources in order to weaken China's relationship and connection with Russia, while the U.S. Tries to build a special U.S.-Russia relationship. I don't think that that's feasible. I think that the leadership of China and Russia both are too aware of the nefarious operations of the Anglo-American oligarchy, but I'm not 100% sure. There does seem to be some indicators that some deals have been made, which might indicate an openness to embrace a special U.S.-Russian relationship that might be ill-founded, especially when you consider the influence of the transhumanist Silicon Valley cultists and Satanists around Peter Thiel and Elon Musk, which are very dangerous. And I would say a control, a very much, they're not different from the British Empire that we have been exposing so much over the years. It's a different part of the same operation, which could involve also positioning the U.S. to become part of an appendage of the thing that Theodore Roosevelt was situating the U.S. to become a part of, and to become the strong arm in defending the British Empire. And that's a danger that I see Trump maybe slipping into, especially exacerbated by the chaos of the breakdown of supply chains under a financial meltdown, which could easily happen by any number of triggers now in place, especially the sloppiness of Scott Bessant's approach to tariffs, which could completely undermine an already broken faith in the U.S. dollar, which is the base of the whole global economy. Everybody has U.S. dollar reserves to settle their trade imbalances, to settle their balance of payments. So if the faith of the U.S. dollar, which is already dwindling, is broken because of a sloppy use of tariffs, which again, I don't think Scott Bessant, as a George Soros, this guy was the head of George Soros's capital management, or his hedge fund, Soros Management, for a number of years. I don't think that this guy's qualified to understand. I understand what is the American system, or how to do tariffs in a non-destructive way that could feasibly undermine and blow out the economy. That's possible if that happens. So I don't know. These are all, I guess, cynical, but I think grounded concerns I currently have.
Could we say the long and short of it is that, as soon as someone gets to this level of power and reverence, we got to remain careful.
What's the
Keep
likelihood?
questioning.
What's the likelihood of Peter Thiel and Elon Musk getting into Russia, getting their tentacles into Russia slowly, are doing ultimately what the liberals said they wanted to do, except instead of left wing decolonize Russia, more like privatizing it, making like a snow crash, Neil Stephenson, private city state, Galtopia, Gulch worldwide. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's super dangerous. I think it's super dangerous. I don't think I've not seen evidence that there's a qualified replacement for Putin. I think that Putin's judgment is pretty solid, but there's been indicators that I'm looking at showcasing a preparation to restore a monarchical system within the next maybe less than 10 years in Russia. There's a few claimants to the throne of the Romanovs who have been, living it up for the past century in France, that are aspiring to recapture their rightful heritage after this little hiccup of the 20th century. And I think that when you look at certain analysts that are out there, and I'm not going to name names, but who do have a lot of influence amongst the intelligentsia, both within Russia, but also within the anti-Great Reset movers and shakers of the West, there is an idea in motion to bring in a city-state type of local control dynamic of Russia, of the regions, of localized, there's 87 different micro ethnicities in Russia, and the idea would be to do kind of like what Lenin did after the Bolshevik Revolution in a certain way, to break down authority to the local mini federations that would then be more divided and thus more easy to control based upon local dialects, local identities, probably with an idea of that sort of Peter Thiel 15-minute Bitcoin city model that they're also pushing for North America. So these are definitely concerns I have for sure. Yeah.
All right. Well, we're going to move on to Mike Holmes. Thank you for the questions. If we measured the quality of the question by the length of the response, I think you knocked it out of the park there, Rick. Yeah,
Thank you.
You bet, man. I'm going to put you on a mute, and we're going to take on a new question from Mike Holmes in Alberta. Thanks a lot, Rick.
Is the mic up?
You're on.
Yeah.
Sweet. How's it going, brothers?
Hey, Mike. Good, man. How you doing?
It could also be a measure of the fact that Matthew just loves long-winded answers because it's his disposition to do so.
That's awesome. It was Noam Chomsky
right.
who always said, like, the reason I don't do the nightly news shows is because everybody up there that's saying everything you've already heard gets to answer in 30 seconds. But when I tell them the exact opposite of what they've been taught all their lives, I need 15 minutes just to reply.
Yep.
So it's just
the one thing that Chomsky and me can agree on.
I agree with him on a lot of things until he went nuts.
Yeah.
Until COVID broke him.
He also had that quote where he talked about the framing of arguments, right? You're allowed to have conversation and debate, even vigorous, to be encouraged, but it's still within the frame of the window that has been allotted to you. I'm paraphrasing, but this is also a Noam Chomsky quote that whether we agree with it or not, it is clearly in action, especially within the Canadian dynamics. Yeah, anyways, sure. All that to say, my question is not necessarily clear cut without a little bit of context. So as anybody that is friends of Matt and friends of Jay and my family has been on occasion to be able to be blessed to not only just know both of these guys, but we've been able to, do events, do shows, and so forth. I was hoping to be able to jump on tonight because if you, Jay, if you want to even just on the side, put up the 338canada.com federal hotmail. There's an update as of March 20th, 2025 on what the projected seats for election are going to be. There's a lot to consider with what is happening in Canada with Mark Carney. I don't know if you're familiar with Dan Dix. He's Press for Truth, among others. But I in our world in Alberta, there's several groups of freedom fighters. Matthew's met a bunch, obviously on several podcasts. There's those that refer to a resistance in Alberta. Alberta is trying to do a thing to be able to attempt standing on its own 2 feet if there is going to be a resistance or if there would be any province that would decide that a Carney win, which I actually believe is an inevitability. Because even though Pierre Poilievre is the guy, he offers nothing. Okay. I don't believe that there is a federal option for Canada. When you look at all the polls, and I know that you can't take that into full context because polls are easily manipulated. And recently on a podcast, even Tom Luongo was like, look, the Canadian system is easy to manipulate. And of course, I agree with that. I also feel like I agree with Matthew when he wrote in his Substack that there is this potentiality for making America more Canada than Canada would be America. I'm sitting back going, the thing that actually makes my mind kind of turn the most is Alberta's going to be doing what Alberta's going to do. Like we're for those that are on the ground and the things that are going on, and I could go into a lot of those details, but I don't want to do that in case there's going to be somebody else coming up after me for a question. So the question that I actually want to propose that I would like not just Matthew, Jay, and several other podcasters to start thinking about and guess on podcasts, because I feel like I could present evidence to believe that I think, like what in the past this oligarchical group has done, is they pivot. So we have several failures on their fronts. I believe that they are failing in Ukraine. I believe that they are doubling down in the Middle East. I think that Trump is running a decent strategy for domestic policy, and this is quite possibly to allow for the North American Union. Whether Canada plays a role in that in its fullness or not. But I believe that his foreign policy is completely hijacked because bodies on the floor are bodies on the floor. And there are lots of podcasts and pundits that go on as guests that I believe are in that realm of maybe a little bit of too much faith in Trump's foreign policies. We got a lot of like peakheads. We got individuals that are caught up in the cults, if you will. Matthew's books do explain this. I won't go into that. So what the question that I have is, I actually think that we have more of a concern that we better be paying attention, that I think, like the League of Cambrai, like Pepin trying to make his way into Venice, that it's time to actually go and string up and take care of these Venetians. And they had to start making deals and start pivoting. And that's what brought them to the Netherlands and then obviously on to England. I actually think that our cabal is getting ready to pivot. And I think that they're on the run. And I think Fortress America is what is being set up in order for, while they continue to do what they're doing and the magic tricks that are getting ready to be played, and the world stage and all the distractions and the JFK release files and the Epstein stuff that didn't get Epstein released, all of this is a part of a great magic trick. And they're getting ready to actually move because they know damn well they're willing to flush the UK down. They're willing to run whatever they feel that they need to in Canada. And Alberta might be falling for a trap. It's quite possible. We may find ourselves making a decision where we could find ourselves submitting the first foothold of the North American Union out of Canada. But I actually think the cabal is moving. So I actually want to say, do we have historical precedents and evidence that we can map that would allow us to be able to track them, so that if they end up in our backyard, maybe we need to pull a Pepin?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that you're looking at really, really important historical variables. You brought up the situation, the case study of the League of Cambrai and of Charlemagne's attempted assault on Venice, which most people have no clue about and don't know how to bring into their calculus. So I appreciate very much that you did that. Of course, both of those two case studies, which are just so extremely important, premised around efforts, for those who don't know, to take down the dominant control center of the mystery cults and the old patrician class of the Roman Empire, the most vicious faction of the Roman Empire that had migrated after the collapse of the Western Roman Empire, principally into Venice, and also Rome wasn't as useful at that period, prior to especially within a couple of centuries of the beginning of the Crusades, that they also initiated up through their efforts to undermine and co-opt the Renaissance that brought Europe out of the Dark Ages, but with a fight. Now, they couldn't prevent that. If it was up to the oligarchy, they would have kept that forever. The Dark Ages, they loved it. Feudalism, they loved it. But so when they saw that they couldn't prevent the breaking free of the Dark Ages with the initiation of this new spirit of the Renaissance, the next best thing is to try to co-opt it, which they did through a variety of splintering operations to splinter Christianity, to undo the potent Promethean Christianity of the Platonist circle around Thomas More and Erasmus, who had played a big role in initiating the revival of what Charlemagne had attempted in the early 800s with his assault on Venice. And that was in what you described, the League of Cambrai. Now, that took a number of generations in my research for them to even have the 1509 League of Cambrai. And I'm not trying to like put a damper on things, right? I'm just trying to say, like, the reality is that took a very, very controlled, impatient patience to build up cultural dynamic that could produce high-level, insightful geniuses like Da Vinci, who played a role in this with Machiavelli, that came out of this process that had even begun, 150 years earlier with Dante Alighieri's efforts to create a culture that was capable of self-governance and of combat with this extremely sophisticated, centralized beast of the mystery cults that are so good at being evil. It's fucked up how good they are at being evil. So that took effort. And despite that, the oligarchy, just like they were able to, I mean, Charlemagne also didn't come out of a vacuum. That was several generations. His father, going and Pepin the Great, and his grandfather Charles the Martel had worked with a whole network of Platonists, true, not Neoplatonists, but the real kind, to build up the cultural and political dynamics that would create a situation whereby a national power could be generated that could do combat with this oligarchy before the assault by Pepin or Charlemagne's son on Venice, that Venice only stopped by murdering Pepin and sowing the seeds of dissension within his ranks that then just kind of fell apart. We saw a similar example when Plato's students under Xenophon at the Academy of Athens were able to lead an assault before Alexander the Great. They led a successful assault using Cyrus the Younger, a descendant of Cyrus the Great, to overthrow, I guess it was Darius II of the Persian Empire directly into the heart of the beast, in the heart of the world empire of the mystery cults at the time. This is before they transplanted themselves into Rome. Before that, you had this massive assault of the March of the 10,000 with a claimant to the throne that had been organized as a philosopher king to be a proper leader, to overthrow and to take control of the Persian Empire. And due to certain, despite the level of I mean, it's an inspiring story. Xenophon writes about it, right? But despite all that, they underestimated the sophisticated level of evil and psyops that they were walking into.
Okay,
And
so
then
do you mind
Cyrus the Great
if I
killed.
add something then? You just made a great statement, right? So we're talking
Yeah,
about sophistication.
yeah.
So I believe that that's an important dynamic about what needs to be considered. And so like I'm a pleb. Anybody that would understand my story and our family's story, and I know that you know my clan, so you understand that we're actually trying to honestly navigate this as best we can. And we're also trying to help with that culture dynamic to understand that. So we have a sophisticated enemy. To bring that historical lesson that you just outlined into our now, where we're sitting, would it be out of the realm of possibility that when you see the quantity of gold, because one thing that he who has the gold makes the rules. I know that's a terrible cliche, but we also know that a lot of this is where Tom Luongo is correct, right? When you're talking about money and you're talking about systems of finance, but I also believe that he has a naivety a little bit here. There is a blind spot in our Austrian economics game, and so I'm going to let him have credit where credit is due with his regard. I'm also going to let have credit where credit is due, say with like Badlands and good old Ghost of Patrick Henry and whatnot. Like they're trying to see something positive, but I'm sitting back going, I pay attention to what is on the ground and bodies on the floor. So I'm actually of the mindset that we could literally be watching that sophisticated pivot. Do you see what it is that China and Russia are doing, because they are the type of minds within their governmental structures that I feel are making decisions to try to not only protect themselves, because I feel like there's a lot of reactionary dynamics to Russia and China. And of course, we have the propaganda flow. You're well aware what's going on in Canada with regards to that. And I'm having to navigate that like in real time in my own province. And doing events and trying to counter it as best we can, or at least not counter. How about this? We would like to encourage minds to be able to think their way through a little bit of Benjamin Franklin common sense. Can we create this culture? Do you see in your study and looking, like, because we shared rapidly as much as we could, even your Substack about Carney, and obviously tonight the video that's been put out. So and then also I sent to you and Jay, I don't like, you may not have even looked at it, but there was a sort of a blanket letter that was put out by a credit union banker in Alberta, because we are trying to figure out how to be able to pivot, because Carney's about to set up this goes into the sophistication. So I know this is a little bit
Mike,
long.
I don't want to be rude, man. We got to land the plane.
Yeah, okay.
We've been on for an hour and a half.
Copy that. I just want to sit back and go, where do you see them? Do you see them pivoting here? Are they pivoting here? Are they going to burn up London and find their way here? Is some of the things that are being played, and could Trump end up being a victim of this instead of trying to find his way through it?
Look, I'm very. The only hope I have for Canada in context, as you well know, Jason and Mike, is Alberta principally, and I agree. I don't think that the fight to take federal that the idea of having patriots taking federal control is at all viable. I think that the system is too enmeshed on federal level in Canada for that to work. And I do see in my Untold History of Canada book series, all of my research on trying to reconstruct a better interpretation of Canada, that the only times we have ever properly disrupted the system of top-down controls, which is the British Empire, has been when provinces have had organized movements of really good people who were smart and who were able to initiate creative flanks that would put good people into influence, whether it was, W.A.C. Bennett in BC, or, we've got our whole, a short list, but a good one of good premiers that fought and took initiative outside of the influence of Ottawa to get things done. And, I cited Duplessis and Paul Sauvé in Quebec, and Daniel Johnson Sr., the premier of Quebec, again, good people working together amongst provinces going at it. That's the way it worked in Canada, because we never had a constitution. We never had a real government. We always had a system founded on the British Empire in our constitution, which it still is the case. Whereas in the US, they actually had a viable foundational, organizing principle, which has given legitimacy to strong federal government powers at different moments in history when good people have used that to do great goods. And, with great power comes a great ability to do great evil or great good, depending upon the principles that are acting upon that power. So, when I'm looking at today, like what's going on as far as the pivot with the systemic breakdown that the oligarchy at the top very much knows is going to happen. They put that crash button into place before most of us here were even born, or just like little kids. I would say there's certain things that are pissing off that oligarchy, that are disrupting the flow of their New World Order scripts. I think one of those things, a big one, is the Eurasian multipolar alliance as it has manifested under the Russia-China partnership, which has created all sorts of disruptive, unexpected dynamics that are not part of the equation for a mass kill off of the population. I think there is a revival of some authentic spirit of nationalism in the USA, which is probably also not probably, it definitely is not part of a desired outcome. But then you've got these transhumanist freaks as well. So again, Alberta is the place where any type of crack is going to be a viable crack to hit on. I'm not somebody who's ever engaged in direct political power plays. Like I'm not behind the scenes. I don't know how Daniel Smith works. I've only encountered some of those networks who are active organizers when I go to Calgary. on your invitation, Mike, and you've introduced me to a number of organizers and patriots whom you've been working with that I've been inspired by. But I'm also a little bit saddened when I encounter similar patriots who are not working together, both within provinces, but also amongst provinces, because there's a lot of people who think the same way in BC and Manitoba and Saskatchewan. And I encounter them online. They write to me and I ask them, hey, do you know about this group in Calgary? Do you know about this? And they're like, no. Or yeah, we don't talk to them. And it's like, well, Jesus Christ, the only way we're gonna have a fight is if we can harmonize and call and what do you call it, conspire.
Or even worse
In
yet,
that way.
they're like often these groups you bring up one to the other, and they're like, oh, they're a bunch of shills. Oh, they're a
Yeah,
bunch of like everybody's like biting at each other's ankles. So when they could be just
Yeah.
helping each other, let go of the little tiny issues that you might not agree on, and get down with nationalism, populism, and make something happen. But instead, they're fighting with each other.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's a really crazy time. So then,
It,
is your answer a yes or a no? Are the Venetians coming for us?
I guess
I think
like
they're already here. I think we've been they're
yeah.
money launderers for 200
Well,
years.
okay, so what I've noticed in my Revenge of the Mystery Cults, volume 1 to 3, is that one thing that Bulwer Lytton, who is I think one of the godfathers of the entire Rosicrucian Golden Dawn takeover, which is behind a lot of very bad things in play right now, including the Silicon Valley transhumanist theosophical sort of operation as a whole, is it's Bulwer Lytton is in many ways the godfather of that shit. And he was the minister of the colonies under Benjamin Disraeli in 1850, what, 1859? And he made a point that the empire needs to prepare its new center of control in Vancouver. I think it was the island of Victoria at the time, that he said is going to be the strategic battleground to control global systems as the East meets West. So that was something that he was looking at firmly, and I think other people who followed him as his disciples, who were very high up in the empire, take that type of thing pretty seriously.
including Carney.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, including Carney. Maury Strong, I didn't even mention this. He was a New Age occultist, right? He owned the Ogallala Aquifer, and it's to this day the Baja Grande um, ranch that he ran with his New Agey witch wife channeler is a mecca of global cults to this very day. Hundreds of
Whoa!
cults are set up in Maurice Strong's giant ranch plantation in the middle of the United States, controlling most of America's water resources.
What?
Um, yeah. So
I
these
wish I
this is
was
like a cult.
surprised.
Yeah, these people are not like materialist technocrats. They are satanic, and they have their whole new agey thing in moving behind their eyeballs somewhere. So yeah, patriots need to, I think, be, you don't have to know all this stuff, like I'm obsessive. I've devoted like 20 years to researching. I don't think people need to do all of that, but they got to at least get an appreciation for some of that topography and some of the understand the nature of the beast a little bit when they're making their decisions and organizing.
Right, that's what I take out of it. Working with
Yeah.
you, it makes me get like it's like a double slit experiment, and I'm getting the interference patterns, and I'm getting like the one solid bar of the globalist technocrats, Venetian bankers, true libertarians through history and stuff, and that's what I try to hold on to. I can't possibly hope to hold on to this stuff because I don't write and research all day like you do. But if we could just get some of this stuff out, I think that's why I've enjoyed working with you so much. And what Mike gets out of it, and so many people get out of it, is that we can at least get a pattern on the board. That's
Mhm.
the goal. Just get a pattern on the board, and when somebody starts walking like a duck and talking like a duck, they're probably a duck.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly that. So, and there's such a hunger right now, right? I mean, we're seeing like patriots now that I've never encountered such a thirst and a hunger for real knowledge of like, what do we do? What are the mechanisms that have worked to defeat the thing? Which is why I appreciate you citing Charlemagne and Pepin's battles against Venice and the League of Cambrai. These are the sorts of historical lessons that patriots need to take it, internalize fast. if they're going to be able to approach this monster today and understand like what was the Charlemagne political economic system and cultural policy that allowed that to happen, or what was this nation state system that Erasmus and Thomas More were able to utilize. Where did it come from that was a weapon of defense and offense against the empire, even though the empire was savvy enough to thwart those efforts to break it? It still was a thing, and it gave rise to the American Revolution. It gave rise to everything good. Was this thing we should be able to understand and utilize and wield. So yeah, man, I mean, that's all I can say to that.
So it's been a pretty long one. I was thinking, now this will be your decision, Matt. How about if we went out with a quick preview of the next chapter? What do you think? Or do you want to keep it secret and private until we're ready?
I don't think I've even seen the next chapter, did I? So I'd
You
love to
have,
see
and
what
you
you
saw
got.
it with the audio out of sync.
Ooh, okay.
Remember, you were like, Jason, now I don't know about this technique.
Well, I'd be honored if you do it, because
Yeah.
I love both you guys, and my family considers
Let's
you
go.
friends, and I'm going to be excited to
It's only
watch it.
2 minutes because it's only half of the next part. 2 minutes,
Okay.
and then we'll come back and do our roundup and goodbyes and all that stuff. That is good. Make sure I find the right clip here. All right, here we go, people. 3, 2, 1, world premiere.
The National Post's Peter Foster described Mark Carney's mandate eloquently, writing,
"Since the advent of the COVID pandemic, Carney has been front and center in the promotion of a political agenda known as the Great Reset, or the Green New Deal, or Building Back Better. All are predicated on the claim that COVID and its disruption of the global economy provides a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity not just to regulate climate, but to frame a more fair, more diverse, more inclusive, more safe, and more woke world."
Mark Carney can best be described as one of the most important insiders and mascots for the oligarchy, serving as the UN Special Envoy for Climate Action and Finance, former investment banker for Goldman Sachs, World Economic Forum trustee, alongside fellow Oxford trainee Chrystia Freeland.
I speak with Mark often about that. I speak with him often. He's actually my son's godfather.
Former governor of the Bank of Canada and then the Bank of England, and the chair of the Financial Stability Board from 2011 to 2018, where he oversaw the growth of the very derivatives time bomb, which was designed to take down the transatlantic financial system in a future-controlled detonation. In 2024, Carney was even made president of the queen of all think tanks, the Royal Institute for International Affairs, aka Chatham House, whose American branch was set up in 1921 as the Council on Foreign Relations. This international web of roundtable think tanks would coordinate several generations of Oxford Rhodes scholars and would follow the mandate of Cecil Rhodes to create a Church of the British Empire and recapture the colonies of America that declared independence in 1776.
And something that my government is going to do is to use all of the powers of the federal government, including the emergency powers of the federal government, to accelerate the major projects that we need in order to build this economy and take on the Americans.
Look at these fools just cheering this guy on like they're just our hero, our hero. So that's the first 2 minutes of what will be the next 5 to 7 minute-ish segment of a video that has taken immense control to keep underneath an hour and a half. Like every time I go to edit this film, something else comes out about Carney, something else comes out about this cabal. It's just crazy, you know. Like I don't know. Like we might be 20 parts to this in a movie trilogy by the time we're done. Who knows? So I want to just going to put it back here so I'm on the big picture. We're going to throw Matt's books out here, QR code to the new series, the new trilogy of books, Mystery Babylon and the Age of Aquarius, Rosicrucian Golem, Edgar Poe's Final Mystery. Now, Poe's kind of a stud, right?
Yeah, massive stud.
Yeah, right. These things you don't realize. Poe is actually like a real hero in a lot of ways in a political sense, and we don't know this. And also the recently released Canada's Potential Eurasian Future. This is a beautiful color illustrated book that everyone should read. Ties in well with the Arctic film that we did that shows a history of Russia trying to cooperate with North America and just getting slapped in the face, and makes sense out of why they just seem to hate Russia and China so much when we could be cooperating and building some stuff, So just scan the QR code below or go to CanadianPatriot.org and you'll immediately see banners where you can pick up these books. And you just need to do it to become a more enlightened Canadian. I want to thank you for coming on, Matt. As usual, it turned out to be a little longer than we were guessing. But
So it was fun, guys.
When is it not?
Well, you guys, I mean, you guys love context. I love context. So I think the audience, if they're here, they love context. So hopefully, enjoyed
We've been it's been a slow winter as I've been really film focused and stuff, so not streaming a lot. YouTube quiet, Rumble great, X fantastic.
Your
You got
talents
hundreds
again.
watching.
I can't sing your praises enough, man. Your talents, your skill set is just so next level. I'm so grateful.
I'm gonna get an
I'm going to run the same plug, Jay. So actually, you should just be quiet for a moment because your work for Injection of Truth, the first one, and the Injection of Truth 2.0, and the numbers that we have been able to garner, like, it is an honor, an absolute honor to know you. You are loved by my family. You are loved by me. And we will do everything in our power to continue to promote, because the one thing about beautiful people is when authenticity rings out from a human heart, it is on the Keplerian harmonic resonance.
All right.
You cannot dissuade that. It just rings true, brother.
Yep. And he figured out planetary orbits, so much respect to him. If you can get Danielle Smith to love me, then I'll be really, really impressed.
Don't put your faith in leaders.
I just want her to love me. I don't care what she leads. She's all right in my books.
It's just lonely up there in the Yukon. That's all I say.
It is, yeah. You know it. All right, guys. Well, I think we're going to call it a night there. We'll call it an end of the stream. And thanks for hanging out so much, Matt. I mean, you're halfway around the world, literally 13 hours ahead of us. Like it's Saturday at noon or something like that.
11:45. So what is that?
Yeah.
I have no idea.
So you're in tomorrow. So I really appreciate you.
Tomorrow's okay. Don't worry. Tomorrow, the world's still here, you guys. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And views are great in the video so far. So everyone head over to Canadian Patriot on YouTube and Rumble and Bitchute and all the above. Check out the video. And that's part 1. And this will eventually turn into probably a 30-40 minute movie at the end. It'll just be released in episodes.
Yeah,
all right.
Good idea.
Thank you all. I think on 3, we're going to do a Let's Spread It. You guys ready? 1, 2, 3. Let's spread it.
Let's spread it.
All right. Now we figured out our internet lag. Okay. Thank you all. Good night. And we'll be back soon with more titillating entertainment.